And the first Sunday school teacher I can remember was Elizabeth Garrett. And I was small, and I can remember the class, and I can remember some of the literature, the things that we did. But Tootie was our teacher from then on. We were called juniors, I believe. And she was faithful to us. She was there every Sunday. She had our lesson prepared. And she always had a little magazine for us called Junior something. And it had pen pals and puzzles and that kind of thing that I remember. But we aggravated her. You can imagine what preteens would do. But we aggravated her all the time. But she was just such an example to us.
I remember my first, and I guess Elaine's first, Sunday school teacher, Miss Minnie McDonald, and then Genevieve, and then Edna for how many years?
Oh, I don't know.
I remember having Rich as a teacher when I was really young, and I remember one incident about that one time. She told us to put our heads over and to close our eyes, and we did. And she told us she was going to give us a little surprise. But she had a napkin, and she covered something up in front of every one of us, and then she told us that we could look. And it was vanilla wafers. I was so excited because we didn't have vanilla wafers in our house. I was so excited about my 2 vanilla wafers.
Growing up in the church in the 80s and early 90s, one of my favorite memories was Chewing Gum Willie. And every Sunday after the last amen was said, all of us kids would zoom over to him, and he would dig down in his pocket and whip out and show us all the gum that he had for the day. It might be spearmint or juicy fruit or Big Red, but every Sunday we always loved to go get chewing gum from Chewing Gum Willie.
Tootie asked me if I remembered the old church. I have 2 memories. One is sitting as a toddler, standing in a bench over here by the potbelly stove. And it was very, very cold that morning. I remember Mother wouldn't take my little coat off. And it was just very cold. And of course, I would assume that everybody sat as close to that stove as they could. The other memory is standing, and it could have been the same day, but standing in that pew, and when they did communion, I reached down to get some of it, and Mother slapped my little hand. Of course, that's why I remember that, I guess. But I do remember that in the old building. I don't know when they built this building. When did they build?
49, wasn't that when we moved into it?
Okay.
Claudine, do you remember what year it was that this building was built?
It was sometime in the early 40s, but I don't know. I didn't go to church here at that time.
It was 49, I think, when we moved into it.
When they moved into this one. Well, we ought to remember quite a bit
I
more
was in
than
church at Bloomington at that time.
I remember the old one. And our Sunday school class was over on that side over there.
It was an
And
old,
then the adults were over on this side. The pews were turned this way.
Mhm.
it's quite weatherboarded
Yeah.
before they built this.
And we went to church in the high school auditorium while this church was
Well,
being
didn't they
built.
use the courtroom down in the courthouse some? Did they?
I don't remember that.
It might be just my memory lapsing back. I don't know.
Claudine's history says the church was organized up in the courtroom of the courthouse.
I don't.
And that they had met in a building down below the courthouse somewhere, and then it was
It's old Robin's store building, I guess, and it was a Masonic lodge.
been a member of the First Christian Church the longest of anyone here. Imogen, can you tell us about how you came to church at first, or?
Well, I had to walk to church, and the old church was always left open overnight too. People come in and they slept. It was walking, traveling, and it were open. They come in and slept on benches.
Yes, and that happened. I was grown and married before that ever stopped. When we had some electronic equipment in here, we had to start locking the church. We had a big long table in the basement. Truck drivers would pull in and stop and spend the night here. Where were you baptized?
I was baptized in the river,
Who baptized you?
Brother Holt,
Tell us something you remember about
45
him.
years ago.
4 or 5 years ago.
Tell us something about him. Everybody's got a story about Mr. Holt. Have you got one about him?
Yeah. No, I don't really have one about him.
They said he had a fiery temper.
Well, I think he did. It's been so long since I went to church.
Well,
Preacher Holt.
when you got baptized in the river, was it
Got
just
baptized.
you, or was it several people?
No, there was a whole bunch.
Was it down at the Backbone, Imogene?
Huh?
Was it at the Backbone?
No, it was down.
It probably was, because I
Yeah.
think that's where I was baptized.
We might have been baptized same time. I don't remember, but there's a whole bunch
Don't
of us
remember the
had to wait out
years.
in the river.
It's been so long that I don't remember exactly when, but that's where I was. I joined the church up here when I was just a young, well, I don't know, I might have been 17 or
Yeah, I think
I'm
I
not
was
sure, I
baptized
guess
before
that, but we were baptized down there because there was no baptistry up here.
Yeah.
Just on snow days to school. But we always walked up here
That's about a
because
mile.
nobody had a vehicle.
That's about a mile, wasn't it?
About a mile.
Oh, we walked too
We
walked
walked
to
2 and
Baptist.
4th mile.
in the early days. And I didn't do much coming of a night. There'd be a whole bunch of walking.
I can remember one of the revivals, since that's been brought up. That's when I began playing the piano here. I was 11, I think. But what had happened, the piano player and Mr. Holt, you said he had a fiery temper. So I think they'd had a falling out over something. I don't know what it was. But he came to me right in the middle of the revival. And he said, "We need you to come play the piano." And it scared me to death, of course. And Bill C. Smith was holding the revival. And as soon as he got through preaching that night, he said, "Let's all just sing When the Roll is Called Up Yonder." Well, that wasn't what we had on the docket to sing. And it had me scared, and he started singing before I could get started, and he was not in the correct key, of course, of what my music was. But Preacher Holt said, "Brother Smith, I think we'd better just start again and get with the piano player." So that solved the problem. But it did scare me, and from then on until I started college, I played, and I was gone maybe three years to Tech, and how many years? Well, 76, so figure back, 11 years from now.
65.
65 years. And this is the only church I've ever attended fully. From a child. My parents were, my dad was a deacon here. My mother taught Sunday school class. Now, I did a Sunday school class when James Paris and all of those boys were growing up. Delana, were you not in my teenage class? It must not have been a great teacher, Sunday school teacher, because nobody remembers. I don't even remember much about it myself.
I remember Vacation Bible School here. I had a memory of a lady who used to come and teach us some singing. About a year ago, a little over a year ago, I asked Lyle Donaldson who that lady was, who she would have been, and he told me she was Connie, I forgot her name.
Russell.
Connie Russell. And she used to come, and I could remember her getting up there and doing the motions with the songs, and but I just didn't remember who she was.
Right here. She stood right here.
Yes, she
It's
did.
when we did that Little Red Caboose. I remember that one. She taught us.
Little red caboose, chug, chug, chug. Little, you remember that?
I do remember that one too.
Little red caboose behind the train, train, train. Smokestack on its back, 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 coming down the track, 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 track. Little red caboose behind the train. Toot, toot.
That's cute.
Oh, man.
Well, I've been called to recall some events of my grandfather, Brother C.L. Holt, that was in this church for many years. And I remember one thing about him. He was a fiery little guy. He was a very tall. And Lewis Elder lived in a house across from the post office, and my grandfather lived about 300 feet away from here, and they got into an argument. My grandfather was a Republican, and Lewis was a Democrat and worked for the state. And they got into it, our argument, and this was retold by Red Caps, who's gone on, and the men said, "Where's Brother Holt?" And Lewis, someone said, "They're out there on the sidewalk fighting." And they were about 70s, they were in their 70s, and they had got into a political thing. I don't know what the subject was, but my grandpa was pretty tough. But the thing that I lived with the group in the church was the time I come to realize there was no Santa. And Ernest Mullins of Mullins Lumber Company and his wife Estelle used to attend the Christian church. And that night, Christmas Eve night, we all gathered in big old tree, cedar, and Santa arrived, and we would, as kids, it was about 1952, because I was a little boy, and I remember it was my turn to sit on Santa's lap, and I told him what I wanted, and I noticed he wasn't wearing gloves, just a flimsy Santa suit, and I noticed a ring on Santa. It was a very unusual ring, but I had saw it before, and it was on Ernest Mullins' finger. And I put two and two together and said, Santa is Ernest Mullins. Well, I had mixed emotions. I was sad on the one hand, and on the other hand, I was glad I had figured this out. But he had an unusual Masonic ring, and it was beautiful. It was a ruby red stone with a Masonic emblem on it. And he had obviously forgot to take it off, and I figured he would never take it off. But that's one night, and I got this thinking about it this evening, and I think it was in 1952. I would have been about 8. But I was mixed emotions. I was upset most of the time we spent at the Christmas church because I was struggling with the fact that there's no Santa. He's Ernest Mullins. And we had, the church was packed, and it was on Christmas Eve. I remember we would hurry. My sister is gone, was 8 years older than I. She would have been about 16, but everybody that attended this church would hurry up and in order to make the Christmas Eve at the First Christian Church in Byrdstown. It was a big deal. And my good friend Claudine Dillon, who knows everybody and has contacted with everybody at that time, she worked at the health office, and she has written a book or a bibliography about my grandpa and told about him. And he was a unusual creature. He was not only a preacher, but he was a prize fighter. No, he whipped a school bus driver one time because when he was principal at the high school, he got a report that one of the bus drivers was driving too fast, and my pa had warned him, and he ended up the second week going to the bus and pulling him off the bus and physically beating.
I saw that.
Well, she can verify,
Yes, I do.
and my speech is a little off because I had a stroke about a year ago, but I thank God, and I would just want to say this in closing for the record. Prayer works. Prayer works. And if you're not a Christian, you have no hope. Because when the world is called up yonder, you won't be there.
I'd like to add something to yours. What I admired more about him, we didn't have crippled children's service at that time, and one of his daughters had to have surgery. And he sold the only vehicle he had to get the money to have her surgery. And for 5 years, he went without a car. And one of the churches he had, how far would Bloomington be from here? About 5 miles?
Six or seven.
He would start hitchhiking to this church that he pastored every fourth Sunday, and he was lucky if he got a ride. And many times he's walked that from this little house right down the road to this church down Bloomington where he pastored.
He wrote a book, 70 Years in Cumberland, and Upper Cumberland, and Pa was just a good man, good preacher, good husband, good father. He was just an outstanding individual.
One more thing to say about him was, as a young teen, he had a way about him. I didn't spend a lot of time with him, but he would come to our CYF meetings sometimes. And I knew that he believed in me. He did. I don't know how I knew that. He didn't come right out and say that, but he had a way to let you know that he loved you and had confidence in you. And the older I get, the more I love C.L. Holt. You talked a little bit ago about the Christmases here. Now, I came from a family of 7. I was the youngest of 7. And the Christmas was the highlight of all our year, and it was not about anything that we might get under the tree the next day. Christmas was about what took place here on Christmas Eve. It was about coming to church, and I think that is so sad. It makes me want to cry, because that was the most important thing that we did. I can remember. I can just see it now, being
I
at
can
home
smell the cedar tree.
and being at home, and my sisters making sure that my shoes were clean and that I had on my outfit and that I had memorized my lines. And so then we would get here, and you're right, it was packed. It was absolutely packed. That just hurts my heart now.
When you're talking about Mr. Holt, there was a wedding here just a few weeks ago, and it was a woman in her 50s, and her parents, they eloped from Kentucky, and they were like 16 years old. Well, Mr. Holt did the wedding here, and so when the daughter was old enough, she wanted to be married where her parents were married. So we set that up for him. So many years later, when Mr. Holt did the wedding here, she was married where her parents were married. So we were privileged to do that here. So
Okay, tell your story, Peanut.
Well, one of the things that everybody always said at the same place, and Claudine's husband and Flem Garrett sat right there all the time, same spot every time. Dick Dillon, her husband. Well, poor old Flem, a lot of them called him Uncle Flem. Well, he got a little older and they took his keys away from him. So one day we pulled up. And
driving.
We pulled up. He couldn't drive this truck anymore. We pulled up. There's a tractor sitting right out there.
Yeah.
Most of you remember that tractor sitting out there. Well, whose tractor is that? Well, looks kind of like Flem Garrett's tractor. Well, come to find out it was Flem's, and he got here before everybody else. And so for several Sundays, Flem drove his tractor to church. He just lived down the road a little bit, and so he couldn't drive his truck, so he drove his tractor to church.
And he could have walked across the line.
And he could have walked almost as well, couldn't he? Poor old Bob Emmert, which is going to be here on the day we have this. Well, Bob Emmert, one night, me and I lived across the road from J.R. Simmons. And J.R., my phone rung in the middle of the night and said, there's somebody slipping around your house. So I go look out the door, and I think it's J.R. called me. He just lived across the road. And I look out the door, and there is a box on my porch. And that box has got a puppy dog in it. So I called J.R. and I said, who was that around my house? And J.R. said, I don't see nobody around your house. Well, come to find out, it wasn't J.R. that called me. They just said that. So J.R. comes over there, and I said, reckon who brought this dog to our house? Well, I don't know, but I know who ought to have a dog. So me and J.R., about 1 o'clock, we go up to Bob Emmert's house, the preacher, and we set that box and dog on the porch over at the parsonage. You ain't got one yet, preacher, but you might get one. And we set that dog with a pup. That dog gets to hollering and wakes Molly up, and she gets up and puts in an old gown for it to sleep on and gives it a hot dog. So, in the middle of the night, then about 2 hours later, J.R. was on the volunteer fire department, and the alarm goes off. So J.R. goes to the fire. Well, on the way back, he decides, well, he ought to get that pup off that preacher's porch and take it home. He really shouldn't have done that. And he pulls up, and that box and that dog both is gone. And to this day, we don't know what happened to that dog to this day or that box. We don't know. That's a true story. That is a true story. Isn't it, Martha?
Molly probably took it to Flem's house.
No, I remember we were still in the old church, and it was Christmas. in the big tree, like James said. He was standing right over there. And Roger Rich and I were sitting on the front pew. And I'll cry. We were always together. We were playmates. We were cousins. And Santa Claus came in. Roger looked around and he looked at Santa Claus's shoes. That's my daddy's shoes. Okay. We had a skinny Santa Claus here. So on Christmas Eve, I always think of that.
Was that the first that you used?
Yeah. But he caught on really fast.
But I've got one more little story about Bob Emmert, because he's going to be here and he needs to be reminded of some of these stories. We used to have a little competition playing ping pong. So one day we was playing ping pong and me and Delilah hadn't gotten married yet, had we, Delilah?
I don't know your story for sure.
I don't know if we had or if we just got married. But anyway, so we was playing. He said, okay. I was a member of the Baptist church before I was here, and Bob said, okay, whoever wins has to go to their church tomorrow. This is on Saturday night. I said, okay. And I was beating the fire out of him, and I got to thinking he's supposed to preach, and if I don't let him win, what's he going to do about going to church at the Baptist church? So I kind of got to thinking about him, and I let him win. Remember that, Bob?
You threw the ping pong.
I threw it, yes. You remember that, Bob. Don't forget that. Now, Claudine here has broke in several preachers over the years.
Yeah. Well,
You used to be the secretary here, and
well, I did, but I was on the pulpit committee, and
you was on the pulpit committee when you got who?
I forgot. We got Bob.
But okay.
Yeah.
Tell about it.
Well, I about forgot it.
Remember Dick was at the restaurant waiting for him, remember?
I-
Forgot that story?
You remember Dick was at the Dixie and Bob come in?
Yeah, no, he was waiting, and Dick got Lyle. Dick didn't feel like he could introduce him properly, and he got Lyle to come down and get the information. And Lyle had to leave because Bob was late getting here. And Dick was standing out in front of the restaurant waiting for him. And Bob came by, and he said to Dick, he said, I'm looking for Mr. Dillon. Do you know him? And Dick said, well, does he owe you anything? He said, oh, no. He said, he's supposed to meet him there at the restaurant. And Dick finally told him who he was. After he got a little more information about him. But he wanted Lyle to be there so he could get the proper information and to introduce him. So that was the story of Bob coming. So he got a bad send-off, and I sassed him off before he got here because I thought he was a salesman that had come back to get even, and I was a little bit ugly. That's it. But Dick was on the pulpit committee to get Bob. They finally got it down to one. Me and Elizabeth Garrett and somebody else was on it. We didn't do a bit of good in the world. And Roger Rich got up at the congregation one Sunday morning. He fired us. And he said he wanted to have a pulpit committee of one man. And Dick was the one man he wanted to get the preacher. And I thought, well, if I couldn't get one, I know Dick couldn't. And he had one for the next Sunday, and it was Bob.
He was talking about Preacher Holt baptizing most everybody in the county. I would like to know, I wish I had kept names of everybody that I've played for their wedding and for funerals. Of course, everybody in the church funerals pretty well through these years that I've been with music. But Fontella and I have done this for several years. She's been with us now, how many years?
Several. But anyway, our music we do the gospel singing downtown. I always look forward to Claudine's fried apple pies. I've always wanted one of those. That and my mother's butterscotch pie. We did like that.
There's two things I like. One is Tootie's Mexican cornbread, and I always go towards the last. So it's like how do I get a piece of this Mexican cornbread? And you just have to hope that somebody else forgot it or something.
Her heart also went into the dried apple stack cakes that she always brought my husband, especially for Franklin every Christmas. He really appreciated the dried apple stack cakes.
That art of making fried pies is 100-year-old or more, I guess, Tom, when you say so.
What kind of pies would you bring my dad?
Egg custard, I believe, was it? Was that what it was?
I don't know.
Well, I don't remember.
He would eat it all.
Yeah. He'd start eating as soon as it settled down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Told them how old you are, Claudine,
No,
on film here.
I'm 24.
Claudine.
The preacher needs to work on me, don't he?
How old are you today?
Not today. First day of February, I was 94.
That's what I was thinking. You was 94. I think you're the oldest person in our church
I know,
right now.
I know I am.
And I believe your mind's still a lot better than some more of us.
Well, wouldn't say that. I wouldn't agree with that.
Well, I think we've all got tired here, and I think we're about ready to switch over and cut it down for the day and pick it up again another time.
Well, thank you, Hugh Hauser.
It has. We've enjoyed this, haven't we?